Hello and welcome to the Mighty Oaks Show. My name is Jeremy Stalnecker. I'm the Executive Director of the Mighty Oaks Foundation, here with a special Independence Day show for you. We've got a very special day coming up, of course, as we celebrate Independence Day and our nation's birthday. And we're going to talk for a few minutes about freedom, what it is, what it means, and why it is important. And I've got some special guests here, very special guests. We're actually just finishing up the open house for our National Training Center here for the Mighty Oaks Foundation. And so we have some special guests in the house. So we've got a lot going on. You can hear it in the background, but we want to talk for a few minutes. Our first guest is Colonel Allen West, United States Army retired, former congressman in the United States as well, and sits on the board of the NRA, speaks on topics related to this, freedom and independence and what that means, and champion for that. Recent book, I forget the title all the time.
Hold Texas, Hold the Nation,
There it is.
Victory or Death.
Hold Texas, Hold America.
Hold Texas, Hold the Nation, Victory or Death. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking to a Marine, and I was talking a little bit too fast. So let me try this again.
One more time. Your book?
Hold Texas.
Right.
Comma.
Right.
Hold the Nation.
The nation.
Colon.
Right.
Not the thing that goes to your butthole.
Okay, that's a different one.
Victory or death.
Right.
I think I got it that time.
Good.
I
Talk slow.
appreciate it. Talk slower.
It wasn't in crayon.
It wasn't in crayon.
Yeah.
He would eat them.
On a big whiteboard.
I got it.
Okay, so continuing on with our very special guests, we also, because this is the Independence Day episode, we needed someone from the other side of the fight. And so we brought on a Brit here today. Matthew Marsden is with us.
He's
and if you
I know.
Yeah.
if you watch the Mighty Oaks Show, you've seen the episode where Matt and I talked about freedom and independence and a lot of these issues. Probably the most commented on episode that we've done has been the one that you and I did on those topics. It was incredible. And back in town, and it's great to have you in the house. So we wanted to talk about this today and freedom and what it means to you. And then to my right is Branden Kunath, our National Programs Director, retired Marine, 6 combat deployments, 7 total deployments, and now serving as our National Programs Director for our organization. And so a great group of guys to talk about these subjects. And I just want to pose some questions, so I'll just throw them out, and then we can discuss them, and we'll move on to the next one when we're done. All right? So here's the first question. I'll scroll down here. Define freedom. Define freedom. Why is it so important that we get this right? Define freedom. Colonel West, how do you define freedom?
Well, I think freedom is the opportunity for you to be able to go out and determine your course and your path in life instead of having someone else try to determine that for you. And I believe that that is the essence of what the United States of America is all about, is that you have seen people come here from all different walks of life, from all over the world, because they knew that here they were not bound to a certain socio-economic class, that they had the freedom to do and live their dreams, and that's what we call the American dream.
Yeah. Is that definition, is that something that you have arrived at over time, or was there a catalyst for you understanding that as your definition?
Well, I think that if you study our founding documents, the end of the Declaration of Independence, you look at the Federalist Papers, you look at the Constitution, and it is all about the individual, their rights, their freedoms, their liberties, and that's what Thomas Jefferson set forth, was that ability, and he called it the consent of the governed. And when the government does not act within that consent, when their aims and objectives restrain or restrict the freedom of the individuals, they have a right to say, we're separating, we're breaking those bonds.
Yeah, that's awesome. Matt, give your perspective on it too. Tell us where you're coming from on this, because it's fascinating how you came to your understanding of freedom.
Yeah,
so define it and then explain it.
I think Colonel West has defined it perfectly. I don't think I can top that. I think what I can do is speak about my experience as someone who thought I was free and then didn't realize I wasn't truly free until I came to the freest country in the world, and why it is the freest country in the world. I think that a lot of people that come from the UK, Australia, countries that we would mainly say are free countries, do not I mean, mainly when we think about America being a free country, we think of people coming from oppressed countries to come here so they can recognize that. They really recognize, coming from, say, a communist country to a country like the United States. But I think what happened to me was I came from a country that I thought I was free and didn't truly realize that I was free until I got here and started understanding the underpinnings of the country. Right, like the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, which if you don't have the Second Amendment, how are you going to have the First Amendment? And gradually, I've seen as I've become, as Colonel West said, I became more educated about the Founding Fathers, about what, on this day, the 4th of July, thank you very much, about why the Englishmen were fighting against tyranny and what that was. I mean, they considered themselves to be true Englishmen, and they were. And I think that from then, the tyranny that they fought against was, they're absolutely right to fight against it. And the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is so important to the founding of this country. And when I first came here, I didn't understand why I loved America so much and why I felt so free when I came here. And without an understanding of history, you can't put it into any kind of context, right? So that's why you see people fighting so hard for things like the Second Amendment. And I think that over the past few years, education on these things has been eroded, which allows people to really think that they're free when they truly aren't free, or their freedoms are being infringed upon. And when I talk to people back home in the UK, I go, you don't understand, like, you aren't free. You're not free in the way that I'm free being here in America. Right? And sometimes, like, I was never taught about the War of Independence, of course. Right. Why would they teach me about it?
The losing side rarely talks about it.
Hang on a minute. So I think that for me, it is something that, even coming from, like, say, a country that is considered to be free, I really appreciate the nuances, what true freedom is, and this is the only place in the world that we have true freedom. And that's why it's so important to fight for it. And again, like, I love going to Texas. I feel more at home in Texas than anywhere else. I really do. I love the South. I love Georgia. I love those states. And to me, I look at this, and I guess sometimes you have to be an immigrant to the country to say, I know how important this country is to everybody around the world. It's not just American. If you lose America, where are you going to go? Like, who do people look to for freedom? And when you don't have anyone. You might have something that has the appearance of it, but they don't really have freedom like we do in America. And it's ingrained in the American experience. And when I speak to you guys, like, it really fills me with so much hope. That people are willing to fight for that freedom. And I'll get off my soapbox now.
Well, the interesting thing, sitting here with my British brother, is that, the colonists fought with the British during the French and Indian War. I mean, they were able to live free lives and everything, but something else was going on at the same time. There was a war between England and France. And after all wars, what do you have? You have massive debt. Well, all of a sudden, England looked and said, well, maybe we can't leave these colonists alone. And so they started to look and say, how do we increase taxes on them? How do we infringe upon their lives more? And then all of a sudden, that became the thing which, really riled up the colonists to say that, for all these years, you pretty much left us alone. You allowed us to live our lives and do what we wanted to do. And all of a sudden, you're going to infringe upon our freedoms that we have here, and you're going to raise our taxes. You're going to, station your troops here and everything. And that's what we see as a violation of freedom. When you have this entity called government all of a sudden violating the individual simple rights and freedoms and imposing a tyrannical will upon them. And we're seeing that play out, right now in real time in Venezuela.
You talked earlier, we were talking earlier, and you talked about economic enslavement. And how really it is that tool, the economic part of that is keeping people enslaved, even though in a free country we might not address it that way.
Well, I will tell you, having been born and raised in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, when you are sitting back and you're waiting for government to send you a check, you ain't free.
Right.
Okay, you're bought, you're owned by them, and it comes back to that whole thing about the buy and your leave. When you go back and you study the great English philosopher John Locke really taught us what freedom was about. And he taught us that those inalienable rights don't come from man. They aren't granted to you. They come from your creator. Life, liberty, and property is what he said. Jefferson made it to pursuit of happiness. So again, what we see is this desire to make people dependent upon this greater entity, which gives them the power, and you don't have your freedom when that happens.
Right. Matt, talk a little bit about, if you would, and you've told this story before, people have heard it, but I think for today it's a really important story, about when you really began to understand. You've done a lot of things. I didn't give your bio again, but one of the movies that you were on was Black Hawk Down, an incredible movie. And when you and I talked before, I talked about my personal connection to that movie. I remember watching that movie. We had done battle studies on that movie as a young lieutenant. And then, a year, 2 years later, we were in Baghdad, the Battle of Baghdad. Streets were blocked off. We were being channeled into areas. And thinking about those battle studies, thinking about that movie, and I feel like I have a real connection to it just because I think of that. But that's where you said freedom meant something to you for the first time.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I have to go back a little bit. I am an actor, so let me talk about me for a second. So I'll go back. But I grew up, in a poor background as a single parent. But I always kind of had this dream of America. Like America was like the blue chip vacation. Going to Disney World. You went to Disney World if you were rich, right? And I grew up like loving the Dukes of Hazzard and wanting the General Lee and just being immersed in the American culture, which was just a very positive experience back then. Certainly with the relationship between Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, even though I wasn't really political in any way, shape, or form. But I certainly grew up watching these things. This is why movies are so important to culture. You referenced Black Hawk Down as being something that was important to you when you're in a firefight. Yeah. And for me, it was strange enough watching Rocky and going, I can come from nothing and be something in America. And in England, it's more of a social strata. It's like you're lower class and you're middle class. And so I remember watching Rocky and going, I can really become someone if I work hard enough. I might not have the opportunity, but if I work hard enough, I can do it. And then cut to a few years later, I'm in Fort Benning, Georgia, and we're doing what they called Ranger orientation. They're like, it is not RIP. You guys, you do not say it's RIP. You do not go through RIP. Okay. So anyway, I'm outside I'm doing the actor thing, like I'm really trying to get into the mind of the soldiers that we were around. And I said to one of the guys there, why did you join? Because in the UK, it's funny, I was talking to a lady outside who's from Ireland, and she was saying, we don't have that over there. We don't have this like appreciation of freedom over there. And for me, when I was going to join when I was a kid, it was like, I don't know what else I've got to do. Like, I'm going to go and join the military. I know how to fight. I'm going to go join the military. And this guy, this ranger, it must have been like 20 years old. He turned around to me and he said, for freedom. And even now, like when I think about it, it's like it's really like it hits so deep, and I just so sincere, and it's mocked in Europe. Americans like freedom fries, and the man, and I was never one of those people to do that, but it really hit me. And it was that moment where you're sitting across from someone who's gonna go and fight. He's signed up. He's gonna go and fight. Might not come back. And I just said, you'd die for me, wouldn't you? And he said, yes, sir. And I just thought, this is the greatest country in the world. These are the greatest people on the planet. I am in it. The fact that this guy would go and die for somebody that he didn't know in another country that was not his country, but for my freedom to taste something that he has all day long. it just made me go, this is what America is about. This is why America's doing this here and they're doing that there. And this is why they try and promote freedom and what it really means.
Yeah.
And it was just a moment for me that you can't learn and you can't appreciate until you're sitting opposite a guy that's willing to die for you.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm in.
Yeah.
Greatest country in the world. These guys are incredible. I just want to know. And that's when I started going, okay, what was this thing on, July the 4th? What is it? What was this fight? What was this all about? And when you go and look and research for yourself, and you clear away all the propaganda and you see what the founding fathers really wanted, it's just a miracle. I mean, it's just the most incredible thing, and something that we should fight for every day, because, freedom, as you guys know, right, and I'm just a wimpy actor, freedom is not free. It's not free.
It's not free.
It's not free, and it can, was it Benjamin Franklin that said, I'm giving you a republic?
You can keep it.
And it's really true.
Yeah.
And that's why, I like every day I pinch myself that I'm around people like you.
Yeah.
It's very, very humbling, to be around people that have gone and done that, and then it's served also the country in Congress as well. It's really incredible.
Yeah.
So that's my story.
That's awesome. Hey, Branden, I mentioned this. You have done 6 combat tours, Iraq and Afghanistan.
Correct.
As a young Marine, as a senior Marine, and then transitioned out of the military. What does freedom mean to you? Now, you come from a military family as well. Your dad served in the Army. You were born in Germany.
Yeah.
On an Army base. What does freedom mean to you? What would motivate someone to go back 6 times? Other than orders.
Orders, re-enlistment bonuses.
Sure.
Not sure what else to do. But
Good. Okay, so moving on.
Yeah. But I don't know if I can really add anything to what these two gentlemen said. But I just look at it as the right to choose with no consequence, and obviously within realms, right? Of what freedom is that you have the right to choose what you want to do with yourself.
Yeah.
And within legal parameters, you can either, be really successful in life, or you can be a bum, and there's really nothing, anything from the exterior that can shape or mold that. Where I've seen it in other places where people are forced into certain things, and you just look at something like prearranged marriages and something like that a young lady has the opportunity to choose her spouse for the rest of her life, the same thing a guy has. And during some of those tours that I've done, I've seen where the things that we've completely neglected, or the basics of things that we take, for granted, that young child, a pen was a magnificent thing over in Iraq.
Like when you're on a deployment, when you're little kids.
A simple pen. When they come, you'd have that young child come up to you and ask for a pen. And you give it to them, and you're just like, it's a pen, whatever, But it's like the craziest thing to them that they've never had before. And that was in Djibouti, Africa. And there were literally kids there that had never seen themselves before when we took a picture of them. And we turned that camera at that time, and you turn around, it poses that picture, and they could see that picture of themselves. They had never seen that before.
Yeah.
And just understanding that, it really, really makes me understand what we do have here.
Yeah.
Even though we take it for granted every once in a while. Some others do it way, way more often. But it's that ability to have that ability to choose what you want to do with yourself day in and day out. Like every day, every day's a new day.
Yeah.
And you can choose what you want to do every morning when you wake up.
So the quality of opportunity we talked about earlier today.
Quality of opportunity. And, folks always ask me, what was your most memorable moment in being in the service? And I will always tell folks, the day in Afghanistan when I saw little girls going to school. Because that opens up the doors to freedom. You know, the chance to get an education, which is something that they did not have previously under the Taliban rule.
Yeah.
And to me, that is the most tyrannical thing that you could do, is to keep someone from bettering themselves through just getting a simple education. And you're right. I mean, so often we look at these things here in America and we just take it for granted. When I hear about kids skipping school, I mean, dude, do you know that there are kids that would die? Kids, I mean, Malala Yousafzai, sitting on a bus, and the Taliban gets on the bus and shoots her because she's a young girl trying to get an education. See, that to me is the ultimate good versus evil. That is tyranny versus freedom right there.
It's crazy that you, well, it's not crazy, but you brought up the whole school thing. It just brings me back to outside our patrol base in Helmand, where we were at. We set up a tent. And it's right outside this small little village, and it's just the typical tent that that they have over there. Not our GP tents or anything, but those like tan with the goofy colors inside of them. And it was just packed with young kids in there, with the biggest grins that you could possibly imagine. And it was hot, like it was hot, and they didn't care. They were under this tent, coloring, writing. It was crazy. And then to think of like now my son, he's got like 4 problems of math that he's got to do. That's very basic.
Into the world.
And and he takes him all day to finish that page. And I'm like, just please do it. Just please do it so we can go. But it's unreal to think back at that. That we were just walking around to make sure that they were safe, so that they could go to school and get an ounce of education, and it's unreal to think of that.
I think of those iconic pictures of during the State of the Union in 2004, I guess it was, Iraqi folks with the purple finger because they had the ability to vote. Again, something that in our country, if we have 40% turnout, 50% turnout, if it's a hot issue, we're really happy about that. People dying for the freedom to vote.
And when you think about school board elections, you're talking about less than 3%, 4%.
Incredible.
Yeah.
We take our freedom so for granted.
And that's why I think it's so important that a lot of these young people that are on college campuses and universities talking about how America is so bad or whatever, they need to just get plucked out and just dropped somewhere for like a week. And say, okay, you don't have a cell phone, you don't have any of these things. Let's see, how you feel about it when you come back after a week.
Do you think mandatory service would help with that? Whether it's in the military or in a community organization?
Not mandatory military service, because I still think you want to have your best, like that young man that you met there at Ranger Orientation. But I do think that it's important that our young people, the forestry service, anything that gets them away and allows them to get out and see, I got to do something that's bigger than just my cell phone or just bigger than just me. I got to give back to a community. I think that that's very important.
One question that I've been asked several times, and I kind of give different answers depending on how my brain is working at the time I'm asked, but it's the question of what is America's role in the world as it relates to the military going into places like Iraq or Afghanistan. We talked about Vietnam earlier today. Does the United States, because we enjoy the freedom that we do and we have the military that we do we have a moral obligation to go into other places and I would say fight tyranny, to give people the opportunity to vote, to get an education and those things? Or should we take more of the libertarian, hands-off kind of view? I know it's not an easy answer, but what's your perspective on that?
Well, having sat on the House Armed Services Committee, I think that we have to be very prudent and very circumspect how we commit the lives of our young men and women into these zones of operation. I don't agree with us being the world's policeman. I don't agree with us getting into nation building, but I think that we do have a moral obligation when we see evil, when we see tyranny, that we go in and we crush it. So that people have the opportunity to understand freedom. So I don't think we run around and try to impose our way of life on other people, because some folks can't understand, democracy. And some places, democracy means if I kill more of you, then I will be the majority, and therefore we have a democracy. So I think the important thing is that, when we finished World War II and we saw the Holocaust. And we saw the face of evil. I mean, the world said never again to that type of thing. So I think that when we see these acts of genocide, these, like the ISIS is, when we see, the intrusions of, Russia, when we see what's going on in Venezuela, I think that the United States can be a leader. It does not have to take the lead role, but it can be a leader in making sure that we stand up for these moral principles and values that we say we believe in.
Right.
I think that a lot of the time people don't realize how important just the United States being vocal about certain things, what an effect that can have. I remember when there was the thing in Iran. I don't know if you remember when it was going, they were rioting in the streets of Iran, and
the Green Movement.
Yeah, and they had their signs up in English, right? They and it was very clear who they were trying to get to back them, and we said nothing. And I think that was a real problem, because that would have been just being behind them and saying, listen, we can hear you and we support you. It doesn't mean that we have to send people into harm's way, but I think we have to be vocal about freedom and what it means. And I think that, I don't think people truly understand what a big stick the United States has. Right, and I think they do have it on multiple different levels. And just saying to someone, "Hey guys, listen, yeah, you're moving in the right direction, and we're behind you." It doesn't, like I say, it doesn't mean sending troops or anything like that, but just being vocal in support for freedom, I think is really important.
Yeah.
And we didn't do it in that case.
No, we didn't. And I will tell you, if you go back and you listen to Lech Walesa, who was the leader of the Solidarity movement in Poland, when Ronald Reagan stood there at the Brandenburg Gate and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," when he said this is an evil empire, he inspired the people that were on the other side of that wall that, here we do have someone that is standing up as a beacon that is with us. They're not going to deploy troops, but we know that we have that moral authority. And that wall came down.
Yeah.
It really did. So I do think it's important that we state, who we are and where we stand.
I think regardless of how you feel about our current president, he makes good use of that type of rhetoric. He is good at picking out who he wants to stand with, and he's very vocal about that. And we've seen some tremendous things happen as a result.
No, there's no doubt about it. But I will tell you that something has to be done with this crisis in Venezuela. I mean, I just don't think we can sit back and continue to look at this. And again, we don't have to be the lead individual or entity, but we can have a leading role in bringing together a coalition, much the same as we did in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm with Saddam Hussein in Kuwait. We can't have people in our hemisphere that are eating dogs and cats and going to the zoo and being starved and going to the sewers to look for drinking water. This was once one of the most prosperous countries in this hemisphere.
Right.
And now look at what has happened. So again, when you don't stand up for these things, when you don't take that role and that position, then you do allow the darkness that is evil. Russia, China, Iran. They are thriving in these type of situations.
Yeah. Matt, you have recently written, produced, directed, and starred in your own movie.
Made the tea.
Control everything.
Did the lot. Did everything.
And working on distribution for that. The movie is called I Am That Man, and I watched it. Brandon's watched it. About a veteran coming home from combat. And I mentioned Colonel West. It avoided the typical stereotypes of a veteran coming home from combat, which I really appreciated. There wasn't one flashback scene, which was great. He didn't beat his family. In fact, he really got back on his feet and moved forward and made a difference in his community. And that's the message we should be sending. But doing that on your own has a real cost to it. Doing that in Hollywood, you've been on some of the biggest movies in the last decade. But you will pay a personal price for that, and I would imagine even a personal price for an interview like this and others. Why is it important enough to you to do that, to represent veterans, to talk about freedom, to do things that matter instead of just things that will necessarily make money or elevate your profile?
Wow. Well, it's knowing people like you guys first. It's really difficult for me as an actor to worry and talk about my career when you've got people that are willing to give their lives for you to be free to have that career. I I also have children that I always tell them, every time we go to get ice cream, I always say, you do know you can do this because there are people willing to go and die for you in foreign lands. And it's really true, because we don't have the threat of suicide bombers. We don't have all these other things. And I really want my kids to be appreciative of the freedoms that they have. And I always tell them, it's funny because I was this thing with people saying, well, this is a little bit off topic, but the world title just went from Anthony Joshua to Ruiz. And I found it really interesting because he was calling himself a Mexican. And I'm like, I tell my kids, you're American. You're not British. You're not, you're Americans. Like, this is your country.
Right.
Learn about your country.
Right.
Embrace this country because, your dad was from England, but I came here for a reason. And so I think that it's really, really important. And I can look and I can say that I have a better life than what my parents did. And I want to make sure that my kids have a better life than I've had. And I want to leave a better legacy, right? And I think that it's really difficult. I'm going to look at my kids one day and they're going to say, Dad, you had this platform or you did this thing and you didn't do something that was really important with it. I can't look them in the eye when I'm an old man and say, you guys can all say, I've been there, I've served. I can't say that, right? I can say I've been in a movie that looked like I served, right? It's not quite the same. So when you're around people that you admire, like the company that I'm with right now, the people that I look up to, the people that I want to be like, I want to take... I said my kids, my son, I told you, he came back the other day, goes, Dad, I want to go to West Point. Yeah. And say, Dad, I want to go to, this acting academy.
Right.
And I'm very proud of that. And I think that, it's really weak for me to be able to sit there and say, oh yeah, well, I didn't take enough chances, especially when I just heard with the amazing thing that Paul just said. I mean, what can you say, than to give everything you have for the country, and knowing that you have a platform to do so. So for me, I have no excuses. Right, I got no excuses.
Branden, in the same vein, you retired from the Marine Corps. You could say, I've served, I've done my part. And I have a personal testimony with, when I finally, it was 10 years after I was out of the Marine Corps, before I said, I shouldn't have stopped serving 10 years ago. I need to continue to serve those who have served. What motivates you, and I'm not talking in big, weird terms, but what motivates you to continue serving people who have served and doing the work that you do?
Just knowing that there's other guys out there like me and families like mine that were going through the same, or that are going through the same things I went through, and just knowing that there's still a purpose for me, that I could easily hang everything up and just live off of what I get from the government,
right?
And allow my wife to go and work. What kind of leader is that for me, though? Like, I would not be leading my family. I wouldn't. What kind of example would I be showing my son that once you get to a certain point, you're done. You just check in. That's in no way responsible for me to provide that example. Like I said, just for my son or just everybody else. My father still works. Man, I don't even know how many days a week that he works now, but he does it with a goal in mind, and knowing that he's got a purpose behind it. And his father still doing the same thing, 80 something years old and still working, because he knows there's something that has to be done by somebody, so why not him? And I look at it same thing for me. There's an issue out there, there's a problem. Instead of me talking about it or at it, I'm going to try to do my part to be the solution to it. And I still got plenty of energy. I came home with everything intact for the most part. My brain doesn't fully work like it's was supposed to before, but I don't even know if it worked fine then either. So yeah, I never really figured that one out. But yeah, there's still something in me.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like I can't sit for more than a couple of days without going stir crazy. Like, why would I want to sit and not do anything?
Yeah.
And if my son, just something very simple, my son was to go to school or around his friends and asked, oh, what does your dad do? What's my son gonna say? Oh, I don't know, he just sits at home.
Yeah.
I can't find any kind of pride in that whatsoever. But if my kids, they understand what I do, but they don't fully understand. They know I help people.
Yeah.
Just that little bit right there that they can go. I can take some. I can respect that.
That makes it worth it.
And worth, 100% makes it worth it.
Colonel West, you have a very high profile, particularly in this arena, and you likewise could say, I've done my part. I served in Congress. I served in the military. I've led in combat. I mean, your resume, by any standard, is one that most men would be proud to have. And yet you continue to stand, you continue to fight. And again, a great personal cost. Not everyone is an Alan West fan. In fact, you have...
the heck with them.
Yeah. You're on some lists. You're on some lists and stuff.
I'm proud to be on their list.
What motivates you to keep doing this, though? Just keep swinging, keep fighting, keep going?
Matt just said it. Matt said, when I look at my children, I want to be able to say that I pass on to them a greater America than what was left for me.
Yeah.
When I think about the sacrifices, my dad was born in 1920 in the South.
Yeah.
They weren't fun.
Right.
Okay. My mom was born in 1931 down south. Okay. My dad fought in World War II. Okay. An Army corporal. My mom worked with the Marine Corps headquarters. They never said a bad word about this country.
Yeah.
They encouraged me, their middle son, to be the first officer in their family. So, I mean, that model, that lesson that they gave to me, then that's why I keep fighting. Yeah. And if you truly took that oath and you truly believe in the oath that you took to our Constitution, which is the embodiment of who we are as the America and the American people, then that oath has no statute of limitations.
Yeah.
You continue to fight until, the day that you die.
Yep.
And for some of us, this ideological war that we're fighting here today is more important than the wars that we were in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
You know why? Because this is our home.
Yep.
Okay? We're not deploying to fight for someone else's freedom. We're now fighting for our very own freedom.
Yeah.
And so, shame on us if we don't make this stand. One of my favorite battles, one of my favorite stories comes from Thermopylae, the Battle of 480 BC, when Leonidas, was told, you can't have the whole Spartan army. Leonidas said, okay, I'll take my personal guard and I'll go up there. And even when on the third day, when he knew that a Greek traitor had betrayed them and shown the Persians a pass to come around behind them, he chose one Spartan warrior and he told them, go tell the Spartans and strangers passing by that here, obedient to their laws, we lie. That's what sacrifice and service and commitment is all about, to a core set of principles that you just don't, cashier for your own personal safety and comfort.
That's right.
You stand no matter what.
That's right.
And so I don't care that I'm on certain lists because I know that I'm standing on the side of what's right.
Right. You're on the right lists.
I'm on the right list.
Yeah.
I'm on God's list.
Yeah. So with that, what part does faith play to either inform your understanding of freedom, what you do? How important is faith to freedom in these conversations? And really, I said this the other day, I was talking to someone, I really feel like we're fighting for the soul of America right now.
You are.
What's the role of faith in this conversation?
It is everything. This is a Judeo-Christian nation that was founded on those principles that, make us unique and different from everyone else. Personal salvation through Christ is an individual thing. And that's what individual liberty is all about. And your first liberty is your spiritual liberty.
Yeah.
That's why the founding fathers, in all their brilliance, your very first individual right in the Bill of Rights is the freedom of religion. Because if you don't have that, you don't have the freedom of speech. You don't have the freedom of expression. You don't have the freedom to assemble. You don't have the right to petition your government for redress of grievances. It all starts with your spiritual freedom and liberty.
Yeah. Matt, how important is faith to you? And you've spoken on this. We talked about this a few minutes ago, but How important is that to you, and how you view freedom and liberty and these topics, these issues?
No, it's the most important thing. I know that's not a popular thing for an actor to say, but of course, I mean, I think one of the ways to evaluate how important America is in things is to say how free would I feel to speak about my faith elsewhere, and even back in my home country, would I be mocked for believing in God? And the answer is yes.
That's your standard of how free is this society?
Yeah, I mean,
how much can I talk about my
yeah, I mean,
my
I can come
beliefs,
here
my
and I
faith?
can sit and talk about Jesus and God and not be looked at like a wackadoodle, you know, and people like really respond, and you know, and by the way, it's not like, you know, we can talk about Aquinas and Augustine and all these great minds, Jerome, like all these amazing people from the past, these genius, like mega geniuses, and you can have a free conversation with it. Whereas it's pretty much like we don't talk about that around here, right, in other places. So I think that, you know, even with that, I mean, for me, I came back to my faith around the same time I had this revelation about the United States. And it's no coincidence that I think they both came around the same time. And as I've become stronger and stronger in my faith, I've become more and more invested in the future of this country, because where are we going to go? There's not another place you can get on a boat and go to. Right? This is it. And so I really believe that we have to fight, like Colonel West was saying. We are locked in an ideological battle, and it is for the soul of the United States. But also, who is the world going to look to? I mean, this is it's a really miserable outlook if you don't have that shining city on a hill.
Yeah.
What you're gonna, you know, I always say, you know, when we talk about chasing our dreams or whatever, right? You say, well, shoot for the moon and you might hit the stars, or whichever way around it is. But if you're looking up here, then you might come here, right? So if we don't have that ideal to aim for, which is the United States and the freedoms that it affords us, where are we going to look to next? Like, where do we bring our sights down to? And if we look in here, we're going to start shooting pretty low.
Right.
And it doesn't take too long for us to get there. Trust. I mean, look, I mean, if you think 100 years ago, we were just figuring out how to get up in planes, right? It's not that long.
Yeah.
So we got to remember, we really do have to remember, and how quickly things, especially with social media, how things can change. But I think that faith, your formation in the Judeo-Christian values that we have, Judeo-Christian values that this country is formed upon, where else are you going to go?
Yep.
You know, Matt just brought up a great point, and it reminded me when I was in airborne school in 1984. Yeah, I'm old. Sergeant Airborne Black Hat said, man, if you set the bar low, you're going to jump low. And that was just a profound thing. And we have always tried to set standards high in America. We have always said, you're right, aim for the stars, and even if you hit the moon, that's okay. But that's what we have to do. And I feel that we're not training future generations to do that. We're training them to aim low.
Yeah.
And this mentality of, you can't get this on your own. We got to give it to you. We got to give you the free health care. We got to give you the free education. We got to give you a house.
Right.
We got to give you universal basic income.
Right.
We don't think that you can go out and earn your own living. To me, that's folks saying, we're going to set the bar so low for you. And that's repulsive.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, you mentioned St. Thomas Aquinas. One of my favorite heroes, is Thomas More.
Oh, yeah.
And what he did.
Oh, yes.
When you talk about, you know, holding on to your faith in the face of government. I mean, you know, once upon a time, the counselor to King Henry VIII, and then when he is told to, you know, relinquish his faith and worship King Henry VIII and the Church of England, he says, can't do it.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
And here's a funny thing about that, Colonel, is if you look back, you can see this in a movie. It's called The Man for All Seasons.
Yes.
Probably the greatest movie ever made.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's incredible, and it won about like 10 Oscars. That movie would never have got made today, and it would never have gone in the Oscars ever.
You can remake it.
I'd love to remake a Man
Why
for
don't
All Seasons. And you know what? It was written by an agnostic. Right, Robert Bolt wrote the actual play, and it's, if you haven't seen it, guys out there, go and watch A Man for All Seasons. As Colonel said, it's an amazing story about a man that stood up against who was the greatest leader of the world at that time. It's unbelievable. So,
And that's freedom.
That's freedom.
Yeah.
and can I just make one more point? So I was telling one of the guys about this before, like something my uncle said to me not long back. Called me up out of the blue, and he said, Matt, what's going on with America? And I'd never spoken to him about America really, apart from the fact he loves Bob Dylan, and he's into that. He said, America, it's not going to space anymore. So when we cut the space, and he went, what's up with that? And I'm like, this is such a random left field thing to say. And he said, no, but America, they're the ones that go boldly. They're the ones that, push the boundaries. They do things that other people can't do. And they stop going to space. And that was a moment for me where I was like, you think about NASA, you think about walking on the moon, and you think of the achievement of it. You don't think about the effect that it had around the world.
The leadership of it.
Of leadership. And of American exceptionalism.
Yeah.
Right? And that goes back to what you were saying about you can only say that you can only set the bar up if you truly believe that this is a great nation and that America is exceptional. Well, it is a great nation and it is exceptional. And if people start knocking it down, you see what they do is they attack the very fabric of the country. Right? They come after whether or not the country is great. They attack the flag and they attack the military a lot of the time. Right, so they try and bring the standards down, and it absolutely has to stop. Right, we got to stop that and say, do you know what? Yeah, America is great, and there is such thing as American exceptional behavior, because there is. You don't get, to the moon having as much data as you can get on a calculator. I mean, we got more technology on our wrists these days than they had going there. That is American exceptionalism, right? And we should be unapologetic about it.
Right.
And recent years, we've started apologizing for that. Absolutely not.
Yeah. Success is something we almost try to make young people feel bad about. The idea that they could be better than someone else. Well, don't ever try to be better than someone else. We all need to be the same. That's that equality of outcomes instead of opportunities. But that's, I think, where a lot of that comes from, is as a nation, why in the world would we be so arrogant to think we could do something exceptional? Because we're Americans.
Because you've been doing it
and we have.
Since the inception of the country.
Right.
Including the inception of the country, which was an exceptional thing.
What's interesting about all of that, though, is that Americans have never done exceptional things and kept it to themselves. I think that's one of the things that makes Americans exceptional. We've shared our technology when we've done things like that. We've shared, you can go down the list, but Americans have always projected that exceptionalism on other people as well and helped peoples around the world for the things that we've done.
Well, often I think that when people do that, when people are generous, it's a reflection, the people that they're being generous to, or people that they're around them that are seeing this generosity, tend to look at themselves and they have one of two reactions, right? They go, I need to be more like that.
Yeah.
Or they're making me look bad, so I'm going to destroy it. Right? I think there's only one of two reactions to that. And I think that what we're saying is, I always say this, you can ask anyone in Europe, if you want to say to them, what do you think of America? Oh, yeah, those are arrogant Americans. Those Yanks and this and that. You go, do you want to go and live there? They'll all say yes. They will all say yes. I tell you, do you want to swap your passport? They'll be like, yes, please. I'm like, there you go. Drop the mic, come out. That's the big thing. America's the big dog on the block, and either you want to play with the toys or you don't.
Yeah. And
America's never been shy in being generous with them.
That's right.
It's the people that appreciate what they're doing or not.
That's good. That's good. Branden, talk about faith in your life and the impact it's had on your view of freedom and even what you do now.
Well, it's given me the right direction, and you can go every which way and try to figure out, what's good for you, and based off of I feel like this today or feel like that tomorrow, and try to figure out life every which way, and you're just gonna spin.
Yeah.
and be confused. But for me, trying to figure out which is the right direction, not only for me, but for my family, because it's not just me anymore. I've got a wife, I've got 2 kids that I need to make sure that they don't become a part of the problem,
Yeah.
and add to it. So what can I do to best as I can make sure that they're in the right direction? And faith is what's grounded me, and what has been that direction to really make sure my moral compass is really my moral compass,
Yeah.
and is the right thing. And it's been my job to provide the example, so that when my kids see me reading the Bible, they ask the questions, "What are you reading about today, Dad?" And I explain that to them, and then they come to me and say, "I just learned about this. Do you know about this guy?
Yeah.
And what about this verse?" And I may not know that verse. Most of the time I don't, but I know the general, and we can talk about that. And I can trust that I'm leading them in the right way.
Yeah.
And understand that the relationship in my house between my wife and I is grounded on truth.
Yeah.
Not what's her, Dr. Ruth, or one of those
Dr. Spock.
Of all the people you're going to pull out, Dr. Ruth.
or one of the books that are out there, that it's somebody's opinion, and their truth isn't necessarily my truth, and all that, and like it's crazy to try to go down that way. So I'm able to narrow in on something that I can rely upon, that I know is not changing, so I can provide that consistency. That's the biggest thing I'm trying to give to for myself and for my children, is that consistent direction, and they have something to be able to go back to. Same way I do. I have something to be able to go back to when I do go off course, when they go off course, and
the lens that provides the world view that keeps us going in the right direction. Yeah. Last question. I'll start with you, Branden. We'll go the other direction because we've been going this way. So
man, they were doing so good. It got to me, and I'm like,
come back to you this time. You get the first.
Whatever
question
I say can just get cut out. So they answer.
All right. So Independence Day, 4th of July, is just a couple days away from the airing of this episode. What's the one message you'd want to deliver, if you could only deliver one message on the 4th of July, on Independence Day?
Enjoy it.
Enjoy it.
Enjoy it. Like, enjoy it. Whatever you want to do that day, go and do it, because there are guys and gals, there's people out there that can enjoy it. There's a shirt that I like to wear, and it's live your life with the sacrifices of those in mind, and understanding that there's people out there that aren't here today.
Yeah.
But the reason why they aren't here today is so that you could have today. So respect that.
Yeah.
And enjoy the day.
Yeah.
And eat the hamburgers, hot dogs, and sodas, and shoot fireworks, and
even in California.
And make sure you don't put signs out.
Yeah.
And just respect the day, enjoy it, and have an American day.
Have an American day.
Have an American day. Like, man, there's nothing better than having an American
louder,
day.
Better.
There's just like this thing right here. Have an American day.
Have an American day.
Like,
Matt,
I'm gonna coin that.
Yeah, put it on another T-shirt.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I screwed up that phrase too.
That's all right. It was good. I liked it. What would you? What's the one message you want to communicate on the 4th of July?
Hug a Brit.
Okay, there you go.
Losing is tough.
Oh,
Losing more than once is even tougher.
I think it's interesting what Branden was saying about, a lot of the times we worry so much about what is in the future instead of being present and really enjoying every moment. But I also do think that there are a lot of people that don't know. Really, it's unbelievable. They don't know what Independence Day is, what happened. They don't know why we have Memorial Day. They don't know the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day and all these other special days we have. So I'd say that, just take the time out. If you don't know what it's about, I know that might sound really stupid and probably to this particular audience, right? Just take the time, or if you do know, take the time to educate your kids, someone you might not know, and say, listen, this is what we fought for back then. And as Branden said, these are the people that people have given their lives over the years so we can still enjoy it. Yeah, because I didn't know for years. I'll be the butt of the jokes like, hey, do you want to come around for a barbecue? It's the 4th of July. I'm like, great. And I come up like with Union Jack like hat and everything. Like, yeah, done. You know, colonialists, upstarts. We didn't want it anyway. No, but no. And when I really understood what it was about, for me it was the beginning of the after I had that experience with us. Soldier, it was the beginning of understanding what it is to be an American.
Yeah.
You know, so go back to the beginning and really educate yourself.
Yeah.
Because it really is a remarkable. I mean, and again, shouldn't have won really in all. You know, militarily, like it's a miracle. It really was a miracle. Even when Britain held New York. Right, it should have been a complete slaughter, but when the colonies went in, and the Americans now they went in, and then the British had abandoned all their posts. It's like they said this would have been a complete, disaster, and also those historical areas around the country that you can go and visit, especially around Virginia and around those areas, are really amazing places to go to.
That's good.
So educate yourself on what the 4th of July really means.
Yeah. Colonel West?
Well, Matt, I'm going to make you feel pretty good, because when you think about America and you think about the Declaration of Independence, we owe it to John Locke and his natural rights theory, because that's what Thomas Jefferson read and studied when he talked about, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed with these certain unalienable rights, of these being life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Because if John Locke had never set forth that understanding that our rights come from our Creator and not from man, we would not have had this incredible drive toward independence. And so what I would say is, as you just mentioned, study and understand that. But my challenge to everyone is, the night before Independence Day, sit down with your family and read the entire Declaration of Independence, so that you understand that morning when you wake up, why you're waking up in the freest, the greatest nation the world has ever known.
That's great. That's great. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate the conversation. For those of you that are watching, Colonel West's book, Hold Texas, Hold the Nation.
Victory or death.
Victory or death. Pick it up. Matt's new movie, I Am That Man. Look for it. We're going to get it out there, and it really tells a great story of a veteran coming home, the story that needs to be told. And thankful for that. Mighty Oaks Foundation, we continue to work to support America's veterans and active duty service members, as well as first responders, and thankful for the support of those who allow us to do that. And for you, for watching, thank you for watching. If you're listening on another platform, maybe a podcast or Mojo, go to our YouTube page. Go ahead and subscribe. You can like this podcast, share it out. We'd love to share this with as many people as can possibly hear it. Hit that notification bell, and that'll let you know when new episodes come online. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.